So let's dive into React Native. For this, I'm back in this project we created in the first course section. In case you did not create it there, or you did remove it thereafter, just make sure you got the development environment setup mentioned there, and then you can download the attached starting project. Once you did that, you will get the same code as I have it here. Just make sure that you open your terminal or command prompt. Here I'm using the one integrated in VS Code, and that you install all the dependencies this project needs by running npm install. And once that completed, you can run npm start to start this expo process that watches the code and builds the preview and serves it on our emulators. I'll then press A and I to start and run this app on my running Android and iPhone emulators and simulators. Here you go. These are my two preview devices. Now in app.js, we already got some code on which we worked in the first course section already. And what we have in here, in the end, is a React component. A functional React component, and indeed in this course, we will only work with functional components and React hooks. We will not use class-based components. So this is a regular functional component. We also got this styles constant, this style sheet object down there, and I will come back to that in a couple of minutes. At the top of this file, we got some imports, and we're importing one component from an Expo related package, and the other components, namely view and text, as well as this style sheet object here, from React Native. And text and view are two of those built-in components, actually two of the most important built-in components, React Native exposes to you to use in your JSX code. Because in here, you can't use divs or h2 tags or anything like this. These are HTML elements which work in the browser when you have a DOM to work with, but they won't work here on a native device, because native devices are not browsers. They don't have that DOM and they don't support those HTML elements. Keep this slide from the first course section in mind. That is how React Native translates different elements into different native elements for Android and iOS. And that's why these components are exposed by React Native. Now, if you visit the official React Native website, then there you will find various guides, which you can definitely take a look at, but you will also find the Components tab, where you get a list of the components provided by React Native. And as you can tell, we actually don't have that many components here, because it turns out that with a couple of core components, you can build any kind of user interface. For example, we got a button here, an image, and text and view. And especially view and text input are super important components which you will use all the time. And as you will learn throughout this course, you can build very complex user interfaces with those core components that you have here. Now, React Native is all about working with those core components that are built into it. You build your overall app UI and your custom components that might make up that UI by simply combining those core components. Because these core components, as you learned, are translated into native UI widgets, native UI elements for Android and iOS by React Native. That's why we work with those core components that are provided by React Native, and we can combine them in our React code, in our JSX code, to build our own components and ultimately our own user interface. So in the end, we just compose our components by combining those core components. And if you think about it, that's the same for React for the web. HTML happens to have more elements. There are H1, H2 elements, divs, articles, section. There are many HTML elements, but in the end, you also just combine those HTML elements to build the web user interface. It's the same here for native apps. So that's what we do with those components. Of course, another important aspect of building user interfaces in general is that you want to style those apps. And when using React Native, there is no CSS. You can't write CSS code because, again, it's not a browser, so the CSS language doesn't exist here. Instead, you can, of course, still apply styles, but you do this either inline, essentially by using props on those core components that are provided, or with help of these style sheet objects, or this style sheet object, which you already saw in the code before. You therefore write your styling in JavaScript, and hence you have no extra styling language. It's all JavaScript, but the React Native team gives you a lot of JavaScript properties which you can set and pass to those core elements, which are similar to the CSS properties. But it's only a subset of the overall CSS property and feature set. But in the end, as you will learn throughout this course, you get all the important CSS properties and features that you need to build powerful and beautiful user interfaces. But back here in our component code, we can see how these core components that are provided by React Native are combined to build a new component, in this case the only component, the app component, and how we then got this style sheet object, which is used to set various styles, which, if you take a look at those properties, look similar to what you know from CSS. And then actually this styles object is provided to this view component through a style prop. But we will take a closer look at styling and at building our own components in general throughout the next minutes and hours, of course. Now, just one final note about this app component. At the moment, this is our only component here. And indeed, the app component in the app.js file has a special purpose. This is the root component that is rendered in your app. Expo will automatically take this component exported in this app.js file and render this as the root component. So any other user interface elements and components must go into this app component or into children or descendants of this app component. But again, that is also something we'll explore in greater detail soon.